In recent weeks, Taiwan has been hit with another academic scandal. The DPP's mayoral candidate, Lin Zijian, one of Tsai Ing-wen's close confidants, was suspected of plagiarizing his master's thesis. This debacle has gone on for over a month now, and it is still a point of contention among Taiwan's major political parties. The KMT, NPP, TPP, along with several scholars, have come out to address the thesis. Taiwan's media covers the controversy as well. On the other end of the spectrum, Tsai Ing-wen's thesis scandal has gone on for 3 years now. Even as debates over her credentials rage in the UK's tribunal court, the Taiwanese public couldn't care less. This shows that Taiwan is still tightly under the control of the ruling party. Objectively, Lin Zijian and former Kaohsiung mayoral candidate Jane Lee's thesis controversies are par for the course for public servants of their nature. It's up to the academic community to decide whether or not they want to regulate these instances. Tsai's thesis scandal, however, has now corrupted the system. It has compromised the integrity of public servants and affected the very root of the country. It has proven that the establishment is capable of and willing to bury academic dishonesty. At stake here are human rights. This is the legacy that Tsai Ing-wen will leave behind. On June 21, 2022, Judge Alison McKenna of the UK Tribunal ruled against the ICO. Her judgment said that LSE had to respond to Michael Richardson's request for Tsai Ing-wen's examiner names and viva date within 28 days. The reasoning behind McKenna's judgment was that LSE legal team head Kevin Haynes already provided evidence of the requested information to Taiwan's courts. Even though the LSE counsel said that it did not have what Richardson was looking for, McKenna believed the counsel made a mistake. McKenna ruled that the requested information should be publicized. McKenna's ruling reveals collusion between LSE and Taiwan's national security officials. It exposed how emails that contained likely inaccurate information were used to create the false narrative that Tsai's examiners were Michael Elliott and Leonard Lee. On March 31, 2021, that false information was changed to show that Tsai's examiners were Leonard Lee and Richard Dale. Last episode, we divulged how the wrongdoers planted evidence at LSE. The tribunal-mandated 28-day deadline came and went on July 19, 2022. However, at the last minute, LSE motioned for a 1-month deadline extension, which falls on August 18, 2022. What will LSE do? Will it stick to what the counsel said and insist it doesn't have the information requested, or will the school go with Haynes' evidence? The LSE counsel and the LSE legal team are at odds. We've simulated how this scenario might play out, and we have yet to find a result where LSE can come out on top. However, on August 1, 2022, 2 weeks before the extended deadline, Michael Richardson received a reply from LSE records manager Rachel McGuire. The school said it refused to comply with the Freedom of Information Act request. The school listed 3 reasons why it should be exempted from providing the information. First, revealing the information would be a breach of data protection principles. Second, the Freedom of Information Act request does not have sufficient public interest reason. Third, revealing the information would place immense pressure on the people included within. However, from Si Wei-Tren and Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s cases, we know that these three reasons are not valid. In truth, these three reasons are derived from the same defense the ICO used to cover for the University of London. That defense resulted in a win for the ICO on September 13, 2021. Things are falling apart for the wrongdoers. On August 31st, the High Court will hold a 1-hour hearing. There, we will expose the ICO's lie that the University of London has Tsai Ing-wen's Viva information. However, Rachel McGuire's message to Richardson proves that LSE has nothing to give. After Alison McKenna exposed that Kevin Haynes' evidence was inaccurate, LSE has nothing it can endorse as the truth. Otherwise, LSE would have revealed who Tsai's examiners were and help rid Tsai of this scandal. Just as Dr. Huan Si-lin said, LSE can't forge any more evidence because if they do, someone will be liable for jail time. LSE can only stall for now. Tsai Ing-wen's academic dishonesty has dragged LSE down a bottomless pit. The LSE legal team must be running out of patience because all of the explanations it's given so far has been provided by Taiwanese authorities. During a press conference on September 23, 2019, the presidential office said that Tsai's Viva took place in the middle of October.
总统所提交给学校的论文，那么是在这个当年83年的6月提交，那并且已经通过了这个口试，是在当年10月的这个10月中，也就是1983年。
So, after this press conference, Rachel McGuire told Michael Richardson on October 21st, 2019, that Tsai's Viva took place on Sunday, October 16th, 1983. That date had to come from Taiwanese authorities because only they wouldn't have understood that Vivas don't take place on Sundays in Europe. However, that was the date that Richardson was given, therefore creating a problem for the school. By this point, Tsai Ing-wen's people didn't even know who they were going to say Tsai's examiners were, so Rachel McGuire had no choice but to say that examiner information was kept at the University of London. In 2020, prosecutor Huang Wei managed to get a copy of Tsai's employment history from 1990. On that document, Tsai wrote that her examiners were Michael Elliott and Leonard Lee. So after this discovery, national security authorities had Kevin Haynes create evidence that reflected that information in Tsai's student record. But the mistake here was that Michael Elliott could not have been an examiner for Tsai because he was her supervisor. On March 31st, 2021, the wrongdoers changed their tune again. They added Richard Dale as a third examiner. After that, Alison McKenna quickly made her crucial judgment. LSE's legal team has been cooperating with Tsai Ing-wen's people since 2019, creating fake evidence. However, the people who gave LSE direction were far too careless. That's why the legal team is stuck in the current pickle it finds itself in. What's strange is Rachel McGuire's message from August 1st, 2022. Why did she preemptively give Michael Richardson a response 17 days before the deadline? The schools always waited until the last minute to give answers to requests with deadlines, so why take the initiative now? Furthermore, her email hints that the LSE Council was wrong when it said the school did not have Tsai Ing-wen's Viva information. Don't forget, the LSE Council said what it did to distance itself from Kevin Haynes, who offered false evidence to Taiwan's courts. On May 4th and May 26th, 2021, LSE Counsel said that it did not have Tsai's Viva records, in contradiction to what Kevin Haynes said. On August 1st, 2022, Rachel McGuire implied that the school had the records, but that it wasn't going to publish it because of the 3 listed reasons. Why can't the LSE Council and the legal team get on the same page? Who is telling the truth here? People who sit on the LSE Council mostly hold one-year terms. Council members were most recently rotated out on July 31st, 2022. Why did Rachel McGuire send Michael Richardson an email on August 1st refusing to comply with his Freedom of Information Act request? It's because the legal team wanted to throw a fastball by the new LSE Council members before they could familiarize themselves with Tsai's thesis controversy. They wanted to get ahead again and control the narrative. The legal team needs to control the narrative. If Rachel McGuire and Kevin Haynes are found to be in violation of the Freedom of Information Act, they face criminal charges and may even be liable for human rights violations. To protect themselves, the legal team needed to take control of the narrative and then let the LSE Council take blame for whatever consequences come. Is this explanation for Rachel McGuire's actions out of the realm of possibility? This was the legal team's only course of action. It's all up to whether Alison McKenna accepts the terms outlined in McGuire's email. Finding out who anybody else's examiners are is a matter of 1 week. However, we've been running in circles for 3 years trying to find out who Tsai's examiners were. LSE's legal team has done many unsavory things to make the process harder. However, the legal team isn't just being difficult and stalling. Kevin Haynes has done far worse than mere stalling. He planted evidence. That is enough to rack him up on criminal charges. On March 10, 2020, Tsai Ing-wen's lawyer Lien Yuan-long requested that LSE archives compare and validate 12 pieces of evidence. Huang Wei sent those 12 documents and Tsai's replacement diploma from 2015 to Taiwan's UK representative office. This was the first instance of Haynes' evidence planting. On June 24, 2020, Justice Ministry Officer Kristen Chen asked Kevin Haynes to verify not only the 2015 replacement diploma, but also the 1984 diploma Tsai presented. The problem is, Huang Wei's request for validation did not include the 1984 diploma. Why did Kristen Chen suddenly request for its validation? Obviously, the addition of the 1984 diploma was the work of high-ranking justice officials. They wanted to add another layer of credibility to Tsai's defense. Kevin Haynes first responded on July 7, 2020. He told Chen that 3 of the documents should be verified by the University of London and therefore said he'd look for a point of contact at that school. The 3 documents are 1. The 2 diplomas, 2. Correspondence between UK Representative Office employee Albert Tang and P.C. Kennedy, and 3. A Viva notification memo from G.F. Roberts. At this point, Kevin Haynes' responses are still logical. There's no reason why the LSE archives would have the University of London's internal documents, and the above documents mostly pertain to interactions UK Representative Office staff had with University of London staff. It had nothing to do with LSE. LSE would have at least records of all of the other evidence, but all of the other evidence is inconsequential. The three documents, however, are the most crucial. They include Tsai's Viva notification memo and the PC Kennedy letter. However, viewers of the show will know that the PC Kennedy letter has been switched out several times for different versions. Some have signatures, others don't. Again, this is due to national security organizations' carelessness. But we know that the University of London does not have any records on Tsai's education. So, if the University of London were asked to validate Lin Yuanlong's request, that would do nothing more than expose the forged evidence for what it is. So, 2 hours after the initial correspondence, UK Representative Office employee Li Yan-yi replied to Kevin Haynes asking him to get in touch with LSE Archives' Sue Donnelly. Sue Donnelly had met privately with Kristen Chen before the validation, meaning the Justice Ministry successfully got the necessary records to validate Lin's evidence into the LSE archives beforehand. On July 23, 2020, the PC Kennedy letters and the Viva notification memo were successfully validated. Kevin Haynes insisted that the University of London's transcript office needed to be the one to validate the diplomas. Today, not a single school institution endorses those diplomas. Nobody wants to bear that responsibility because diplomas are binding legal documents that carry legal implications. During the first evidence planting instance, Kevin Haynes seemed to be a little more passive. It almost seemed like he was taking direction from the UK Representative Office and the LSE archive. However, this doesn't quite make sense because Kevin Haynes is the one that discovered Tsai's 278-page student record files. Kevin Haynes decided to validate the other two documents because they were unsigned and did not carry legal weight. It's obvious Kevin Haynes understands the nuance of legal ramifications. After 2 weeks, the letter and memo went from unvalidated to validated. So those two documents, which should have been validated by the University of London, suddenly were validated by LSE after a trip to the school archives. By this point, Kevin Haynes became a conspirator in this thesis controversy. During the first evidence-planting instance, Kevin Haynes seemed to be more discerning. He just provided the necessary means to validate Tsai's documents. He didn't do anything of legal consequence. He just did as he was told. The fact that Taiwan's prosecutors used documents with no legal power to prosecute scholars had nothing to do with him. But how do we account for Kevin Haynes' actions after the second instance of evidence planting? Kevin Haynes was the one that derived Tsai's examiners from his 278 pages of files. But he also withdrew that claim, saying that he extrapolated that information based on a hurried view. So what other mistakes or oversights have been made? In her December 16, 2020 letter, Kristen Chen said that the request came from justice institutions in Taiwan. That letter has since been submitted to evidence. However, how likely is it that LSE legal team head Kevin Haynes didn't realize he was being asked for evidence in a case? Another piece of evidence that proves Kevin Haynes faked evidence came with the December 16, 2020 letter. He said that Tsai's examiners were Michael Elliott and Leonard Lee, while simultaneously admitting Elliott was her supervisor. However, she completed her thesis with advice from her supervisor, Professor Michael John Elliott, during 1983. If Kevin Haynes knew that Michael Elliott was Tsai Ing-wen's supervisor, then how did he not realize that Elliott couldn't have been her examiner? LSE's guidelines on nominating examiners for MPhil and PhD examinations clearly say that candidates' supervisors or advisors may not be examiners. This kind of thing should be in the realm of LSE legal team's knowledge. As head of the legal team, how did Haynes not know that? Kevin Haynes gave false and impossible testimony. He infringed on Dr. Dennis Pang's rights. When faced with such an unscrupulous legal team which insists on exemption, investigators are more than ready to deal with their nefariousness. The biggest obstacle to ThesisGate getting more mainstream attention is the media. Anyone who follows the evidence discovered by investigators can easily realize the truth behind Tsai's academic dishonesty. Economic and political media is constantly looking for new outlets to maintain the discussion around ThesisGate. It has published the book Evils, and a film is in the works. If one day discussion around ThesisGate dies, Tsai Ing-wen wins. In June 2021, Dr. Pang traveled to the United States to accompany his kids to school. The Taiwan courts gave Pang a hard time, refusing him the opportunity to appear in court over live stream. By October, a warrant was put out for Pang's arrest because he did not show up to a pretrial hearing that did not require his presence. Pang's lawyers were there to represent him. A judge that is meant to uphold the law was turned into an agent of a harsh dictatorship. Pang's warrant carries a minimum detention period of 4 months, and the warrant is effective for 13 years. In 2021, Pang began a speech tour in America where he unveiled his findings to the public. His tour caught attention despite the media's best efforts to silence him. Pang struck a chord with the overseas Taiwanese community, leading to 2 newspaper ad campaigns calling for Tsai Ing-wen to step down. On July 17, 2022, which is International Justice Day, a Canadian non-profit organization, the Justice Star Award, unanimously named Pang the recipient of its 2022 award. The Justice Star Award said that Dr. Pang was nominated by many academics and prominent members of the overseas community. The committee lauded Professor Pang's fearless performance in defending Taiwan's freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and judicial justice, and in monitoring and challenging the totalitarian government. The Justice Star Award compared Pang to Nobel Prize winners Maria Ressa and Dmitry Murtov. At the same time, the award reached out to Pang's alma mater, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which had this to say. The University of Wisconsin-Madison is proud to encourage all students and alumni to sift and winnow for the truth, both in academic pursuits and in society at large. Thank you for your message highlighting the focus of your work in support of alumnus Dr. Dennis Wenjung Pang. Pang's award and the school's words are a major encouragement to ThesisGate investigators. The Justice Star Award shows that Tsai's thesis scandal has reached the overseas community. This will put pressure on the University of London and the London School of Economics. Former executive director of Amnesty International USA, Jack Healy, published an open letter on Facebook on July 29th. He urged U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to look into Pang's unfair treatment when she visited Taiwan. He asked for Dennis Pang to be given relief as well as guarantee Taiwan's freedom of press. Jack Healy not only drew attention to the human rights abuses in Taiwan, but he also described Tsai's thesis controversy, including the classification of Tsai's documents until 2049. Tsai's thesis controversy is gathering more attention. ThesisGate is no longer a matter of simple academic dishonesty. It's a human rights issue. This is the legacy Tsai Ing-wen will leave behind.